Hello and welcome to BattleBots Armageddon Season 2, and oh my god, you're still here. Thank you for sticking with me. We're on episode 6 now, and if you haven't seen episodes 1 through 5, then you should probably check them out because they are a lot of fun. But we're going to have a lot of fun tonight as well, with 8 more action-packed fights. Coming up the pipeline, we have some really interesting matchups tonight. We had the debut of some very beloved fan favorites such as Death Roll, Uppercut, Rusty, and Ribot. Meanwhile, we have some interesting debuts as well, including some Robot Wars champions in Apollo and Eruption. And we also have Petunia from the Netherlands and a classic era bot, Mo. Everything leads up to our main event, which is a slugfest, hopefully, between Ribot and Bombshell. But first things first, let's get into our first fight of the night. We have Death Roll facing up against Vlad the Impaler. Death Roll is returning from last season, and they definitely had some good moments, but they had a hard time keeping up with the meta, unfortunately. That said, it's still a very lovely looking robot, has a cool weapon, and it's an alligator. We love alligators in this household, but that said, not much has really changed about the robot, so that is a concern to bring up. But it faces up against an even older design in Vlad the Impaler. The lifting forks of this robot that made its debut in the 90s, one of the oldest robots in the competition. That said, it's still very agile, drives very well, and I have hope for it, and I'm hoping that it delivers. Either way, I think this fight should be a lot of fun, so let's get to it. We have Vlad the Impaler, a classic robot, going up against Death Roll, the only robot from Australia in our field. Oh, a miss.
The Impaler went for a crazy boxer on out of the gate, but apparently being thrown around by Death Roll here.
Death Roll just taking it to Vlad the Impaler. What more can they really do? I mean, this is almost a 30-year-old robot here. It kind of shows, unfortunately, but Death Roll is a scary opponent for sure. Oh, slammed right into the wall.
I'd say, especially Death Roll already a very, pretty much, like, modernized, like, it's the apex of its design, really. It's like perfect, stable, four-wheel drive vertical spinner. Vlad the Impaler, like you said, almost a 30-year-old machine. Like, things like ground game and spinners, they weren't really prevalent in the heavyweight scene back then. Vlad the Impaler having a very hard time keeping up with Death Roll right now.
Yeah, Vlad the Impaler, no question, is a legend, but this is not their fight. And they're stuck on the wall, I think. I think that they might be done.
That is an incredibly unlucky way for the legend to land. Vlad the Impaler now.
Oh, Death Roll just messing with them while they get counted out. And I think that this is a KO in Death Roll's favor. Very good. Death Roll was pretty dominant from the start of the fight, just pushing Vlad the Impaler around, just getting some good hits on him. Unfortunately, it just kind of seemed like Vlad the Impaler couldn't find a moment to capitalize. Even when it got to the side, it had troubles getting underneath Death Roll, and eventually that just meant the fate of them. But that said, it was still a lot of fun to watch, at least. I love this part where Vlad the Impaler just gets thrown onto the wall and beached on there. But with that said, Death Roll starts off its season with a positive win, and Vlad the Impaler, well, I guess we're gonna have to see what this old dog can do, but for now, they move on to 0-1. But, speaking of legendary robots, we have our next fight, which is Yeti facing off against Eruption. Yeti is back from last season, and they definitely had some pretty good moments last time around, but they've been redesigned. That weapon is really powerful. Those forks are way better than before, and I'm looking forward to seeing what it can do, although I am concerned about its mobility while the spinner is going, because that thing is big and powerful, and it could hinder Yeti's drive. Eruption, on the other hand, is new to the world of Robot Arena 2, and that said, they're not new to robot combat by any means. I mean, they won the final Robot Wars competition. This is definitely a robot that Yeti should not underestimate. It's got a nice flipping mechanism and is very well driven. I mean, it could very easily toss the Yeti out of the arena. They gotta be careful, especially when their drive is the way it is. But I'm looking forward to seeing this fight. It's two pretty legendary robots going at it. Let's get into it. We have Eruption and we have a Yeti. Eruption.
Two vastly different machines in every context, from the weapon to the driving style, even the color scheme.
They're definitely
polar opposites of each other.
Speaking of polar, Yeti's done a decent amount of damage to Eruption so far. Oh, flying right over the wedge, as monster trucks do. Again, Yeti has to get underneath and try to control Eruption, I feel, but maybe they won't need to. Oh, now they did. There we go. That's
trying to take it hard into the wall.
Yeti getting flipped. Eruption's no slouch for sure, but can't do a lot of damage with a flipper, unfortunately. Yeti flips itself back over, and it's out! Yeti came on very strong to start the fight, but like I had predicted, their mobility did seem to be an issue. That said, Eruption still had some good moments, but fortunately it was a very short fight and they weren't durable enough to withstand Yeti. Yeti moves on to 1-0 to start their season, but I mean, Eruption's won titles before, you know, they can definitely bounce back. There's 4 fights at least from each of these robots, and I'm looking forward to seeing what their next fight entails. Speaking of next fights, we have another matchup of legendary teams. We have Mechavore and Sigma Raptor. Both of these robots are new to the world of BattleBots Armageddon, but they're both very classic teams. We have Mechavore with its iconic horizontal spinner, which made waves on the world back in the day when they took out the then reigning #1 seed Vlad the Impaler, and I think they still got it. They're very mobile and that weapon is pretty powerful. Their opponent is Sigma Raptor from the legendary Team Raptor, one of the coolest teams out there in my opinion. They show up to this fight with a grappler, and it's very well controlled for sure, and it's sort of got a bit of a spinner killer design to it, so it'll be interesting to see how this unfolds and to see who comes out on top. We have Mechavore and Sigma Raptor, two pretty iconic teams in BattleBots. Got Mechavore, we got Team Raptor, two of my very favorite teams, and Mechavore's spinner is no joke, and meanwhile, Sigma Raptor seems to have a setup that's good for the horizontal, so I don't know what to really expect here.
Mechavore, curse, one of a few legendary machines in the competition this year. I have to say, how it does, it just shredded the entire grappler setup.
And he's out of the arena.
Sigma Raptor, but Sigma Raptor still gets up and over the wall.
And I think they're in a position, unfortunately, where they can't get back in. That's some beautiful driving on Sigma Raptor's part for sure, and they're getting counted out.
Sigma Raptor unfazed by the damage of Mechavore. If Mechavore finds itself beat, this one is over.
This fight I really didn't know what to expect. It just seemed like Mechavore couldn't find a footing in this fight and an opportunity to actually get a good attack on the Sigma Raptor. They got a few hits, but for the most part they were just kind of controlled by Sigma Raptor the whole time, getting flipped around. And while some collateral damage was done, I don't think it was fortunately enough to get them the win, especially after they got knocked out of the arena pretty quickly. Sigma Raptor starts off with 1-0. And speaking of which, we have another classic era horizontal spinner coming at us. We have Uppercut facing off against Mo, which that should be an exciting matchup, I think. Both of these robots are back again, and I'm looking forward to seeing what they do, because last season Uppercut, while it did have a few good fights, it didn't really make the waves that I was hoping it would make, comparatively to how they perform in the real world. But that said, that weapon is pretty powerful, and I think they could absolutely do something intense. Meanwhile, on the other hand, we have Mo, which is also returning from last season, but last season they just kind of like couldn't stay under control and were bouncing around the arena for the entirety of their fights. But it seemed like they had gotten their stuff together in time for the exhibition fight in the last episode, where they faced off against Nightmare and Overkill, where it was pretty dominant. That said, it seems like they are a bit more under control after looking at these test videos, and I'm looking forward to seeing what they can do, because that weapon is terrifying. Honestly, they both are. But which one is more terrifying? Let's find out. We have Mo, and we have Uppercut. Two very iconic robots, and Uppercut taking advantage of Mo's control issues. I mean, last season Mo was definitely struggled. I mean, they're struggling now. They lost a wheel already, but last season they only got one win, and but Uppercut loses a wheel. But yeah, Mo only got one win last season, and it was definitely a rough season for them. They couldn't figure out the way to keep their robot moving while spinning, and they paid for it.
Rough break last year for Mo, however, it looks like it might be doing better this year, though Mo has a lot of control issues, it seems.
Oh yeah, but not as much as last year. At least you're not bouncing off the walls like they were last year. So, fix something. Oh, and they ripped out Uppercut's spinner.
Whole blade off of Uppercut, so it's one of the wheels off of Uppercut.
Mo trying to cosplay as Pussycat.
Oh, almost stranding itself on its back.
And he's
it's
out.
An ankle biter.
Mo was aggressive right out the gate, and I was worried for a little bit because pretty early on, Uppercut sniped one of their wheels, but thankfully they also sniped one of Uppercut's wheels shortly after, and like we've seen many times before, having 3 wheels is better than having 1 wheel, that's for sure. And from there, Mo just kept attacking and attacking until eventually he took off Uppercut's spinner and got that knockout blow, which moves them to 1-0 for the season so far. Definite improvement from last season already, but Uppercut, I think, needs to get some work done. I'm a little concerned about them, but we will see. Anyways, we're on to our next fight. But before we get into that, let's take a look at some fights that didn't quite make the cut for the show. The first fight we had was Frenzy versus Axe Backwards, and throughout this fight, both robots definitely showcased some control problems. Neither robot was really able to get it going, although at one point Axe Backwards did rip off Frenzy's hammer, which was pretty notable throughout the fight. But other than that, it was pretty much just a pushing fight. And for the most part, it seemed like Frenzy had the edge on that, but I don't think they did enough damage to edge out a win, because at the end of the fight, by a split decision, we had Axe Backwards with their first win of the season. Next up, we had Kronos facing up against Mammoth. Mammoth came out aggressive, but unfortunately flipped itself over right away, and they were unable to get back up. Kronos starts its season with 1-0. Then we have Claw Viper versus Shellshock. Shellshock faced a similar issue it faced last season, where it just couldn't stay balanced and just kept spinning out of control, and Claw Viper just pushed it around and did lifts, and while it did take some collateral damage, it just did way more, and then eventually knocked Shellshock out of the arena winning by an out-of-the-arena knockout. Next fight we had was Deadlift versus Falcon, where Deadlift had a pretty easy time just pushing Falcon around, and this fight honestly could have been over even sooner, but they wanted to just play around and have fun with it, I suppose. But Deadlift moves on 1-0, Falcon goes on to a lifetime 0-5 record. And speaking of lifetime 0-5 record, two robots from last season who went 0-4 were Daisy Cutter and Gemini, and Gemini made easy work of Daisy Cutter, giving them their first BattleBots Armageddon win. Next up were two more returning robots from last season, Foxtrot and Mastiff. It seemed like Foxtrot had the edge in the beginning, but then Mastiff flipped over Foxtrot, and unfortunately they were unable to self-right, giving Mastiff a quick KO win. The next fight was Nuts 2 versus Sharko to end off these basement fights. Nuts 2 couldn't really do that much, but I feel it did a little bit more to Sharko, and the slight damage it caused gave it the win by unanimous decision at the end of the day. But at the end of the day, these fights were ones that just didn't make the cut for TV, but you can see them in full if you go to my second channel, Pori Sucks, which will be linked in the description. I hope you enjoy them. Well, you might not, but either way, the records will be updated in the doc, so see you there. We're back, and every round there's probably going to be a bit of an update like that to check in on fights that perhaps weren't the most exciting, but let's get into the fights that were the most exciting. Let's get back, as promised, to Rusty versus the Four Horsemen. Here we have Rusty facing off against the Four Horsemen, even though there's only 3 of them. Both these robots are exciting.
Yeah, it should certainly be an interesting fight. See if Rusty can really connect with any of the horsemen, given it jumps when it swings its weapon.
Yeah, those Four Horsemen, they're so low that Rusty's gonna have a hard time getting any meaningful hits, which, I mean, I guess it's not Rusty's fault. You know, you don't usually build a robot with the intentions of fighting, like, lightweights, but here we are.
Rusty now giving chase to War. Pizza was making a move on it. Daisy just slammed into Pizza. Looks like the Four Horsemen are going to be having a lot of friendly fire issues throughout this fight.
Oh yeah, I mean, the Four Horsemen had that issue last season. They only got one singular win, and that was because Mammoth flipped itself over, so yeah, Rusty's doesn't have a huge challenge here, but they are struggling to get any meaningful hits, while the Four Horsemen are getting okay hits on Rusty.
Something that might work to the advantage of Rusty. I don't know if either of these spinners are high enough to clip the axe off the back of Rusty.
Yeah, that could definitely change the course of the fight. You don't want to lose to a multi-pot early on, that's for sure. Rusty just struggling. Oh, there's a hit from Pizza.
Good hit there to back some Pizza. Here comes Daisy now.
Rusty is getting some hits in, and nothing too special, but they are doing a little bit of damage.
War is starting to burn up due to Rusty.
Yeah, it's I'm surprised that it's starting to burn up that much, considering the hits haven't really looked that spectacular. Rusty just... Oh, Rusty... are they gonna get out of the arena? Is Rusty out?
Rusty, bridge between the walls. There
oh, they're back. And it looks like while they were out, the two spinners broke each other's spinners?
I think.
Okay. That might actually... Well, I guess Rusty might end up winning the fight due to the friendly fire from their enemies, because it was pretty close up until then.
Rusty's still swinging away at War, Daisy at Buttercup finds enough wedged underneath.
And Daisy's just going for it, I guess. Oh, there we go. Daisy's underneath, but Rusty gets off.
Pizza Saw Blade had become a floor spinner from the original BattleBots season.
Indeed. Gonna make them dizzy. And, there's not much else to say. I mean, this fight is gonna go to the judges. This certainly was an uphill battle for Rusty. While they definitely had all the control, it was definitely difficult for them to land hammer shots due to the low height of the Four Horsemen. I guess that happens when you fight smaller weight class robots. This moment had me a little worried when Rusty almost knocked itself out of the arena, but thankfully it made it back, and both spinners of the Four Horsemen even took each other's blades off, which might have cemented a win for Rusty. And the judges have come to a unanimous decision, and the winner is Rusty. No surprise there, really. I'm not too shocked. Rusty starts off their season with a 1-0. Maybe not the strongest 1-0, but at least it's a good start. But let's move on to our next fight. Petunia versus Apollo. The Netherlands versus the UK. This is definitely a matchup I'm very excited for, so let's take a look at these two robots. Both of these robots returned from last season, and let's take a look at them. Let's start off with Petunia, which is a crusher bot. A type of robot that there really isn't a lot of anymore, unfortunately, and that's a shame because it's a fun design. Petunia comes from the Netherlands, and they won a fight or two last season, but they didn't really impress, and they're redesigned and they want to do that now, but they got to get through Apollo first. Apollo coming off of a decent 2-2 record in their fight night, and it's definitely a good robot. I mean, Apollo does have a Robot Wars championship under its belt, so that flipper is no joke. So Petunia is gonna have to tread lightly and try their best with this. I think this could go either way, and I'm excited, so let's do this. We have Petunia and Apollo, robots that are returning from last season. Apollo with its good 2-2 record, and Petunia having a few moments here and there. Although I wouldn't want to get crushed by that crusher.
Probably not. That is a very dangerous
a
on the front of Petunia. Going to be a full game for Apollo. Going to have to showcase itself, and it does so.
Can you get back in? They can.
Yes, they do.
All ride saves the day.
Apollo almost threw itself out of the arena there. Was lucky.
Downside of a flipper.
Petunia now going for the wheel wells.
Wheel wells.
Going for the wheel wells.
Oh, Petunia's trying to get those wheel wells, but Apollo runs away. Apollo's having a hard time getting under. Yeah. Oh, there's a flip. Almost out of the arena, too.
There. Getting Petunia up and over the wall might be a challenge, but it's potentially Apollo's best way of winning this fight. They gotta be careful with that claw of Petunia. It goes straight through that flipping panel.
It could damage their kernels, and they don't want that.
Well, they almost exposed their internal.
Oh yeah. Can't be doing that. Oh, there we go. There's a flip. That's what we came here for. That's why we paid. Oh, almost exposing its kernels to Petunia once again. That would not be good.
Certainly the last thing I would want against Petunia. It's to let Petunia get to the gas tanks or the cylinders on the inside. Petunia trying to right itself. Does so, but only momentarily.
Petunia getting another clamp on there briefly. Oh, Apollo almost getting a bite in on its own, apparently.
Apollo's getting tired of being bit by Petunia and decided to try to bite it back. Didn't quite work.
Keep biting each other. We have 30 seconds left, and both robots have definitely had moments in this fight. Oh, and there's Apollo flipping Petunia into the air.
Almost out of the arena again.
And it is out of the arena.
And Petunia, I think, is in a horrible position now to right itself. Into
But
the
they
arena,
get back
trying
in.
to though.
But they get flipped
back
up
in.
here again. Yep, and with 5 seconds left on the clock, I think that's safe to say this fight's going to go to the judges. I don't envy them. That's going to be a hard one to call. There really wasn't much in between you could do in this fight. I mean, while they did have some moments, I feel the highlight of this fight was definitely the airtime that Apollo gave them, just flipping them into the air left and right, and them either being on their back or in the air. Almost getting flipped out of the arena at one point even. Not to say that they didn't have some good control moments, because they certainly did. But that airtime was just fantastic, and thank you, Apollo, for showcasing that. That said, I don't think that this fight is as black and white as it seems, because Apollo definitely had some misflips, and Petunia did have some control moments. But it'll be up to the judges, I suppose, and see what they said. And we have a split decision. Judge Green Square scored the battle for Apollo. Judge Smurf scored the battle for Petunia. And Judge Zaza scored the battle for the winner, Apollo. And I can't say that I disagree with that match. A close call for sure, but Apollo reigned supreme with those flips, and I definitely agree with that. That said, we're moving on to our next matchup, where we have 2 newcomers to this series. We have Rampage and Sporkanak. Both of these robots are new to Armageddon, but they both haven't had the cleanest track record in the real world of BattleBots. We have Rampage, which is a vertical spinner. There really isn't a lot to say here about this robot, but it does appear to be upgraded pretty well, and it does look like it at least packs a bite, which I'm hoping that it delivers. But first it has to get through Sporkanak, which is a unique robot that's a lifter and hammer combo, which is definitely a robot that'll make you turn your head if you see it. That said, let's see who can hold up better. Let's get to the box. We have Sporkanak and Rampage, a battle of 2 potential underdogs. I'm looking forward to this.
Should be interesting. 2 robots that you don't usually consider to be huge threats. Maybe that could be their year, though.
Yeah, this is a potential to make a comeback. Rampage trying to go at Sporkanak, and Sporkanak running away. Oh, but Rampage getting a hit there.
Able to get Sporkanak up and over. Sporkanak got them nice big wheels in the back. We saw Rampage looking to clip some of them off, and now trying to take Sporkanak up and over the wall.
Yeah, there's not much Sporkanak can do, I guess, besides maybe get underneath Rampage and flip him over.
Sporkanak having a hard time keeping the front end squared up to Rampage.
Yeah, Rampage definitely driving this fight very well, showcasing that their previous performances in the real world were indeed a fluke. Rampage definitely trying to knock off those wheels.
Yeah, Sporkanak just doesn't have the maneuverability to keep up with Rampage right now. Rampage all over the back of Sporkanak, getting under the sides of it. Doesn't look like there's too much that Sporkanak can do.
Yeah, it appears Rampage is a bit lower than Sporkanak, and oh, there we go. Sporkanak has a chance there, but they don't capitalize on it.
Sporkanak has Rampage pinned against the wall, was trying to get it up and over. The wall wasn't able to. Rampage now continuing to hunt Sporkanak down. Sporkanak under it momentarily again there.
I'm not even sure if Sporkanak's lifter even works, because it's got underneath, and I haven't seen it fire one time, and I don't know what that hammer can really do with the lack of reach it has. Oh, and there, Rampage knocks a piece off of Sporkanak.
Sporkanak had lost some bit of the front wedge, I suppose. Rampage dominating this fight right now.
Oh, he finally gets one of the wheels. About time. Oh, 2 of the wheels. And that happened.
Rampage ricocheting itself off the floor into the ceiling there really showed the power of the weapon on Rampage. An underrated weapon in this field, and now it's right back to chewing away at the sides of Forkanock. It got it boxed into the corner here.
30 seconds on the clock. Sporkanock's gonna have to try to get Rampage out of the arena or something, because they haven't really... I don't even know if they've scored any points in this fight, really.
Rampage ripping up the back of Forkanock now. 14 seconds left. Almost got it over the wall.
Yeah, what a beautiful thing. And, yeah, I think it's safe to say that this fight will indeed be going... Oh, it knocks off a last piece. It goes to the judges. From the get-go, as soon as the bell rang, Rampage was definitely on top of this fight. The only moments, really, where Sporkanock showed it had potential possibly was when Rampage accidentally got itself on top of its wedge, but it didn't look like its lifter worked at all, unfortunately. And that said, Sporkanock didn't even really get any hammer shots either, and Rampage just kept taking pieces off of them, including some of the wheels and part of the front. Definitely an impressive performance on Rampage in their debut fight in Armageddon. And Sporkanock, unfortunately, has to rethink some things, I suppose, because, unfortunately, they just couldn't hold up to Rampage. But the judges will decide who won this fight, and we have a unanimous decision. And the winner is... Rampage. Not really surprised there. Very good performance, Rampage. Good job. Rampage goes off to a great start, and Sporkanock, well, we'll see. But it's okay because it's time for our main event. It's time for Ribot and Bombshell. I'm excited for this. Let's take a look at them. Let's look at Ribot. It's a frog. We love frogs in this household. They're a great animal. Love them very much. And it's a Swiss Army bot. We have the vertical spinner and we have the undercutter. And both are definitely very brutal to come close to. Ribot definitely showcases a lot of potential last season, going 2-2 in the fight nights. They didn't make bracket, but they definitely did have some pretty good matches in their career. They face up against a robot that at one point in time was also a Swiss Army bot. We got Bombshell, which is a vertical spinner. Pretty much unchanged from last year, while Ribot definitely improved a lot of things from last year and also has more configurations. We have Bombshell, who's just same old, but I guess don't fix what isn't broken, because Bombshell performed very well last season, making the round of 16 before they got taken out, unfortunately. But they want to go further, and I think they could. They're fast, their weapon hits hard, and it's definitely a good machine. I'm looking forward to this main event, so let's check it out. We have Bombshell and Ribot in this main event. How juicy is that? Not two robots you usually would expect in the main event, but... oh, not easy being green.
That is not. It's Ribot finding that out the hard way, just flipping over Bombshell, trying to contact with it.
Both these robots are green Swiss Army bots, although Bombshell you haven't really seen much outside the vert configuration in a few years, so can they be called a Swiss Army bot?
Yeah, it's hit there! Bombshell taking Ribot directly to the ceiling on that one, now juggling it with the vert. As Bombshell now bullying Ribot around the arena into the corner, maybe trying to get it up and over the wall.
Oh, and there Ribot does like a slide along the wall there with its wheels. Very impressive. Ribot's still trying to... oh, they take out part of the wedge of Bombshell.
Ribot looked like a tree frog the way it moved across the arena to avoid that out of the arena. Now it come back with a vengeance, taking half of the weapon off. Or half of the wedge, rather, off.
You don't want to mess with tree frogs. They're very venomous, I think. Are they venomous?
Yes, they are. Yes, they are. Some of them are, at least.
Ooh, Ribot almost out of the arena. Is Ribot out? Oh, they're not out. They're in. They're in. Venomous tree frog lives another day. Bombshell. Gonna capitalize on it. Bombshell is driving this fight very, very well.
Yeah, they are. We're about barely escaped 3 out of the arena now. Now gets sent across the floor.
We've got a minute left on the clock, and I think that they both need to make... Ooh, and big hit from Ribot there.
Huge.
They both need to make some moves here to secure victory. Oh, and Ribot rips a wheel off of Bombshell.
Definitely not a good sign for Bombshell. They've been driving this fight so well. And now they're going to have a hard time. Another big contact there. Almost sent Bombshell out of the arena. How about now continuing the assault? There's 30 left to go now. Bombshell is stuck. Ribot's out of the arena again.
20 seconds left, and Ribot's capitalizing on Bombshell being upside down. And nope, they're both right side up again. Bombshell gets a nice little hit there.
There's 10 left now. Ribot. Bombshell finding itself upside down once again. Bombshell.
It's gonna go to the judges, I think, and yep, it is. Both robots came out very aggressive in this fight, and I gotta say, they both had some very shining moments. This was a very fun fight to watch. It was a slugfest, if you will. Bombshell definitely had the ground game due to Ribot going with the undercutter, but with that said, there were some big hits that were dished from both these robots, and I think eventually it added up as Ribot started to do some decent damage to Bombshell, while Bombshell really didn't damage Ribot all that much. Some big hits from Ribot there, and even taking off one of the wheels at one point. This is going to be a tricky fight to judge for sure, but thankfully we have our 3 judges with our 17-point scoring system, and they'll make the right call. I trust them. Look at those hits. Crazy fight. I don't know which way this is going to go. And the judges have made their decision. We have a unanimous decision. And the winner is Ribot. Very good job, Ribot. We have Ribot starting off its season at 1-0, and Bombshell, this fight really could have gone either way, and I would not chalk this up as a bad loss for Bombshell by any means. I think that we'll see some beautiful things from both these robots, and with that said, we've got the end of the show here, and next week, episode 7, where we will have 8 more action-packed fights. I hope to see you there, and if you like this, subscribe, like the video, comment what you thought. I'd love to see some engagement from you, and I hope you enjoyed the show. See you next week. Same bot time, same bot network. Stay famous, y'all.